Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're diving into a case that's well, it's really both chilling and incredibly complex.
Yeah.
It's the Humiston family tragedy in Fall City, Washington.
Right.
5 family members murdered,
Hmm.
a surviving child, and the suspect,
Yeah.
the victim's brother, a teenager.
Oh, wow.
So we'll be trying to understand what happened, looking at the impact on the surviving child, the legal challenges this case brings up,
Right.
and the role the family's lifestyle might have played in all this. To help us navigate this, we have, well, a leading expert, really.
So,
Really, you are. A criminologist
okay.
and a victimologist. So remind us, what exactly do those terms mean?
Well, a criminologist studies the causes and patterns of crime, sort of the why and how of criminal behavior,
Gotcha.
and a victimologist focuses on how crime impacts victims.
So you're looking at both sides of this terrible equation.
I guess you could say that, yeah.
Okay, so before we get into the, all the really complex stuff,
Yeah.
let's just set the scene. 5 members of the Humiston family. Mark and Sarah, the parents,
Right.
and 3 of their children, Catherine, Joshua, and Benjamin, were killed.
Tragic.
2 siblings survived, an 11-year-old girl and a 15-year-old boy.
And the 15-year-old.
Yeah, the 15-year-old boy is now the accused killer. And my understanding is that the 11-year-old girl, she was the one who actually called 911.
She did, yeah. She managed to escape and call for help.
Wow.
Think about that for a moment, you
Yeah.
know? Imagine the strength and presence of mind it took for her to do that, to make that call,
Yeah.
having just witnessed something so horrific.
It's hard to even comprehend. From the reports, she survived by playing dead while her brother allegedly went through the house,
Just,
checking on each family member. I mean, that detail, that just stuck with me.
I know.
Just the terror she must have experienced during those moments, it's unimaginable.
And the psychological impact on this young girl, it's going to be incredibly complex. Dr. Tambora, who's worked with a lot of child victims, points out the conflicting emotions she'll likely face. On one hand, you've got the anger and grief from losing her family in such a brutal way.
Of course, of course.
But then on the other hand, there's the fact that the accused is her brother, someone who was a part of her life, someone she probably loved.
It's an incredibly difficult situation to even think about,
Right.
let alone live through. And to add another layer to all of this, there's the possibility that she might have to testify against her brother in court.
Exactly. Imagine the emotional weight of that.
Oh, gosh.
To potentially be the key witness in a case that determines her brother's fate. This brings up a huge challenge for the legal system.
Yeah.
How do you ensure justice for the victims while also protecting the well-being of a child who's both a survivor and a key witness?
It's like walking a tightrope, trying to balance those two very important needs. Now, as investigators started piecing together what happened, they discovered something truly disturbing. The 15-year-old brother had apparently tried to stage the crime scene to make it look like his 13-year-old brother Benjamin was responsible.
Wow.
That's really unsettling.
This detail really changes how we view the case. You know, Dr. Tambora emphasizes that staging a crime scene isn't some spur-of-the-moment thing.
Right, right.
It suggests premeditation and awareness,
Yeah.
which is, well, chilling, to be honest,
Yeah.
especially given how young he is. This brings up a very tough question.
What's that?
Should someone so young, capable of such a calculated act, be treated as an adult under the law?
That's a debate that's been going on for a long time. This case really brings it into sharp focus.
Yeah.
I mean, Washington State typically releases juvenile offenders by 25.
Okay.
But in a case like this, with such strong evidence of premeditation, it makes you wonder if that's appropriate.
Yeah, it challenges us to think about what we believe about juvenile justice, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Tambora argues that, a 15-year-old's brain might not be fully developed when it comes to understanding consequences.
I see.
But the fact that he tried to cover up the crime, that suggests a level of awareness that makes things a lot more complicated.
So we have this young girl who has endured something truly horrific and might even have to testify against her own brother. And we have this 15-year-old accused of a terrible crime, but his actions suggest a level of premeditation that's hard to reconcile with his age. It makes you wonder what happened inside that family that could lead to such a tragedy.
Well, the Humiston family was, by all accounts, deeply religious and quite conservative.
Really?
They homeschooled their children and, according to reports, kept them pretty isolated from the outside world. So naturally, that leads to questions about what impact that kind of upbringing might have had.
I see. The family's lifestyle and beliefs, they were clearly very important to them. But could those same things have also created, maybe unintentionally, pressure or stress within the family?
That's a really good question. Dr. Tambor has pointed out that, yes, there's research linking strong religious beliefs with lower crime rates overall.
Right.
But that doesn't mean those families are immune to internal struggles and conflicts.
Right, right.
Just because a family is religious or, protective, it doesn't guarantee a harmonious environment.
So we're seeing a family that, from the outside, might have looked like, well, almost a model,
Yeah.
of devoutness, togetherness.
Right.
But something went terribly wrong. What was it? And what role, if any, did their lifestyle play? We'll be exploring those questions and a lot more right after the break.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking reminder that even in families that seem, I don't know, perfectly normal on the outside,
Right.
there can be hidden struggles and pressures
Yeah.
that we might never know about.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about how important it is to have support systems in place, not just for victims of crime, but for families in general,
Right.
who might be struggling
For sure.
behind closed doors. Having access to mental health resources and early intervention,
Right.
that can make such a huge difference.
It really can.
But even more fundamentally, I think it's about creating a society where people feel comfortable seeking help
Yeah.
without fear of judgment
Absolutely.
or stigma.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue.
It is.
So many facets.
For sure.
But the well-being of families and individuals,
Right.
that has to be paramount.
Totally agree.
Now, circling back to this particular case,
Okay.
the question of whether a 15-year-old should be tried as an adult,
Mm-hmm.
this is a really difficult one.
It is.
It's a debate that's been happening for years.
Yeah.
And this case just puts it under such a harsh spotlight.
It really does. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have the sheer gravity of the crime,
Right.
which some argue requires the full weight of adult punishment.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have to consider the developmental stage of a 15-year-old brain.
Right.
Like Dr. Tambora pointed out, even though they may be capable of terrible things, they might not fully grasp the long-term consequences
Right.
in the same way an adult would.
It's almost as if we're asking the legal system to reconcile
Yeah.
two completely opposite ideas.
Right.
The need for justice, which often involves punishment, and the need for rehabilitation,
Yeah.
which focuses on helping someone become a productive member of society.
Exactly. It's a balancing act. And
Right.
finding that balance
Right.
is where things get really tricky.
Yeah, and as we mentioned before, the standard in Washington state
Right.
is that juvenile offenders are released by the age of 25.
Okay.
However, in this case, where we have evidence of premeditation and an attempt to cover up the crime,
Yeah.
some people feel that a longer sentence is necessary.
I can see that.
Something Dr. Tambora said earlier really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah?
She said, "Prison is not a place for healing, but for punishment. The system must ensure that rehabilitation is part of the equation for juvenile offenders, especially those who have committed heinous crimes."
Wow.
I found that to be such a powerful statement.
It is.
It really forces us to look beyond just the idea of punishment and consider what it truly means to rehabilitate a young person
Yeah.
who has committed a terrible act.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think it also makes us ask what justice looks like for the surviving 11-year-old girl.
Right.
How do we support her
Yeah.
and ensure that she has the resources to heal while also making sure that the person responsible for the loss of her family
Yeah.
is held accountable?
It's such a sensitive situation.
It is.
And it reminds us that the justice system isn't just about punishing the guilty.
Right?
It's also about offering support
Yeah.
and a path to healing for the victims.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing the impact of these events on everyone involved. And it reminds us that there's a human being at the heart of every legal case.
Earlier, we talked about the family's strong religious beliefs
Right.
and how they homeschooled their children. This has led some to wonder whether those beliefs or their lifestyle could have somehow contributed to this tragedy.
Right.
How do we even begin to unpack something like that?
It's a sensitive topic, and we have to be
Yeah.
very careful.
Yeah.
Well, it's natural to look for explanations.
Right.
Especially in a case this horrific.
Yeah.
We can't allow ourselves to stereotype or make assumptions
Right.
based on someone's religious beliefs.
Of course not.
There are millions of people
Mm.
who find peace and solace in their faith.
Right.
And it's crucial to avoid generalizations.
You're absolutely right. And Dr. Tambora made it very clear
Yeah.
that having strong religious beliefs
Right.
doesn't cause crime or lead to family dysfunction.
No,
It's just not that simple.
it's not.
It's a complex issue with
Yeah.
so many contributing factors
Yeah.
that could have played a role. in what happened within the Humiston family.
And it's also important to remember
Yeah.
that we only have a limited amount of information.
Okay.
We don't know the full extent of their family dynamics,
Right.
their personal struggles, or all the specific circumstances
Yeah.
that led to this tragedy.
Of course.
We have to be cautious about drawing any firm conclusions.
So while we can acknowledge that religion was a significant part of their lives,
Mm-hmm.
it would be irresponsible to speculate
Yeah,
about its connection to the crime itself.
right.
We can, however, consider the impact of their lifestyle,
Okay.
particularly the reported isolation.
Yeah.
Could that have been a factor?
Isolation can definitely impact individuals and families in different ways.
Right.
We know that healthy social interaction
Yeah,
is crucial for development and emotional well-being.
of course.
The lack of those connections, especially for young children,
Mm-hmm.
can sometimes lead to challenges.
It makes you wonder what life was really like for those kids
Yeah,
growing up in that environment.
for sure.
What did they experience?
Right.
And how did it shape them?
And it leads us back to the question we posed earlier.
Yeah.
What does a just outcome look like in this case for everyone involved?
Yeah.
Especially for that young survivor.
It's a question that deserves careful consideration
It does.
and a lot of thought.
Absolutely.
And it's a question that will likely continue to be debated
Yeah.
as this case goes forward.
Right.
What do you think,
Oh, wow.
based on everything we've discussed?
It's a question with, well, no simple answers.
Right.
We're dealing with a situation where this young girl, she's lost her entire family, I mean, in the most horrific way imaginable.
It's just...
And her own brother is the one accused.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to grasp the depth of her pain, the complex emotions she must be going through.
It's hard to even fathom
Yeah.
what she must be going through. And then there's the question of the accused. I mean, whether he's ultimately found guilty or not, he's a 15-year-old boy facing a future overshadowed by this terrible event.
This case really highlights the fact that there are no easy solutions, no one-size-fits-all approaches to justice or healing,
Right.
you know. We have to consider the unique circumstances of each person involved,
Yeah.
the severity of the crime, the potential for rehabilitation. We're always striving for a system that acknowledges the suffering of victims, but also holds perpetrators accountable
Right.
in a way that allows for some possibility of redemption.
It's a delicate balance.
It really is.
It's like trying to navigate a maze with no clear path.
Yeah.
We've talked about so much today. The unimaginable trauma of the surviving child,
Right.
the chilling details of the crime itself, the debate about juvenile justice, the complexities of the family's religious beliefs and their isolated lifestyle.
Yeah.
There's no easy way to sum it all up.
No, I don't think there is. I think what's so fascinating about this case is how it forces us to confront our own beliefs
Yeah.
about right and wrong, about punishment versus rehabilitation, about the nature of evil, the possibility of redemption. It really is a deep dive into the human psyche.
I think you're right. Maybe the point of a case like this isn't to give us simple solutions or definitive answers, but to challenge us, to push us to examine our own assumptions, to make us a little uncomfortable, and to ultimately grapple with the messy reality that life is rarely black and white.
Absolutely. It reminds us that we're all constantly learning and evolving, and sometimes it's the cases that trouble us the most, the ones that stay with us, that teach us the most valuable lessons.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Humiston family tragedy, I want to leave you with something to think about. Considering everything we've discussed, what do you think constitutes a just outcome for everyone involved? What does justice look like for the surviving child, for the accused, and for a community grappling with such a horrific event? It's a question that deserves careful consideration. And as this case continues to unfold, it's important that we approach it with empathy, with compassion, and with a commitment to seeking justice and healing for all involved. It's a tragedy that will undoubtedly stay with us, but it's also an opportunity for growth, for learning, and for a deeper understanding of the complexities of the human experience. Thanks for joining us on this difficult but important deep dive. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep seeking knowledge, and keep diving deep.